Welcome to another live Third Apron podcast. I'm your host, Yossi Goslin, NBA salary cap analyst. And I thought today we might just be talking about the Kevin Durant trade mostly, but I think last night's events were pretty seismic for the short-term future of the league. So we got a lot to discuss. Joining me, friend of the show, Sam Quinn from CBS Sports. Sam, where do you think we should even start? Just we got this Kevin Durant trade that just they preemptively came before Game 7, which I don't think should have been allowed.
No.
And then
Yossi,
one of the
between us,
just
how much
most
sleep did we get
crushing
last night?
ways. Sorry, what?
Between us, how much sleep did we get last night? Did we get up to like 6 hours?
I think I got 5, so not too bad.
I think I got like four and a half.
Yeah, so excuse us if we're interrupting each other too much, if we're not on our 100% game, but it was a long night for us. But yeah, I mean, last night's game just started really looked like it was going to be a classic, and then just a repeat of the 2019 finals, where now seems to be a whole relitigation of just what a calf injury is and how teams should start treating the injury differently. I mean, yeah, where do you want to start? How do you want to start with this one?
I saw people suggest that calf injuries in the NBA should be like concussions in the NFL now, where like there's an actual protocol and like you can't come back until you've cleared it. I'm not a doctor. I can't tell you if that's a good idea or not. I still think that we should probably lower the number of games in the season, but I feel like that ship has sailed. The NBA is never going to do it. So we're kind of just here. I guess teams are just going to be more cautious now. I think the Pacers we should probably start with because so just to let people behind the curtain a little bit, like we in the industry, we pre-write stories sometimes, just to get ahead of things so we can get stuff out, right as a game ends or right as a trade happens or whatever. I had a lot of stories pre-written last night to show you the breadth of what I did. I think I and a lot of other people had Thunder dynasty stories written. I may also have had a Pacers dynasty story ready. And I don't think we're going to be running that one. The
Pacers
Pacers
dynasty. Interesting.
I mean, if you want, we'll get into why I thought that was plausible. Like, I didn't think they were going to win like 3 in a row or 4 out of 5 or whatever. But like in the modern NBA where we've had 7 champions in 7 years, I would have bought the idea that they could have like won 3 of the next 7. I think that would have been plausible. So that was kind of what I was getting at, especially in that weak East. But in the span of, like 3 hours, they go from potentially winning this year's title to being out of the running for next year's. And who knows what happens beyond that. We can get into it. Like, I don't know, other than the Tatum injury, which ironically happened a month ago, I can't remember a team's like big picture fortunes changing so much on a single injury in one night. Like the Pacers I thought were gonna like maybe run the East for the foreseeable future, and now they're just gone.
I agree with that point you made, that I do think at this point calf strain should be treated like concussions, just with the caution that once a player even has a sign of symptoms, that you're out and you're going to be out until you're cleared. Obviously, it's different with the calf injury; these linger for weeks and months. But this is just the worst case scenario now. How do we not learn from what happened with KD 6 years ago? I was just talking about it with my wife, like, because KD got traded. I was like, and we were talking, oh yeah, he injured, because she remembered that he injured himself in that one game, and then that was literally a couple hours before this game happens. And the Tatum one, I don't think there was any. Was there any something like lingering ahead of time, or did he have any
Not
strain
that I
at all?
remember. He had the wrist, but that's obviously
Hmm.
not related to the
Yeah,
cat. There might
yeah,
have been something that was unreported because just frankly, a lot of guys have injuries that aren't reported this time of year. But I don't think there was
yeah,
something that was like easily publicly predictable.
yeah. Seemed like that one was just more so, just a little more of a freak accident. But yeah, the Tyrese Halliburton one, Damian Lillard one, they played on calf strains. We've seen this movie before, and now the East is just like not even, it's not wide open anymore. It's just like there's 2 teams, I think, and that's kind of it, as far as like the true title contenders.
Do you want to go down the list and just like before we get into the Pacers specifically, we're thinking about the Cavs and we're thinking about the Knicks, right? Like as the top two now.
Yeah.
Orlando is like looming. We'll see how good they are. I just want to run a few teams by you. Number one,
We said
what's that?
Cleveland number one, New
Said
York
Cleveland
number
number
two.
one, New York number two, Orlando number three. Do we maybe take Philadelphia a little bit more seriously now if they can stay healthy?
Yeah, you kind of have to now. I think like they probably should make the playoffs, and I'm like, but I'm not even that confident. I'm not even saying that with like
Health.
with grace to them. I'm just saying, yeah, they should get in now.
Well, I mean, the
Uh,
other thing about this is we didn't just lose the Celtics and the Pacers. We lost them before the season even started. Inevitably, we're going to lose more teams, right? Like there are 4 or 5 teams now that might be pretty good in the East, but like inevitably one or two of those teams is going to drop out with injuries as the season goes on too. So like the next one, Detroit now, are they thinking this is open enough for us to make a big move? I think that's pretty plausible. I don't think the Pistons are that far away.
so I think with Detroit, you can. I think I don't know if people will agree. I feel like Atlanta might be in like a similar tier now. I think they're gonna make a nice step. I like the way they put the team together after the trade deadline. I think there's something where maybe they won't be quite as good as Detroit, but I think they should be above the playing range now. We also got to keep in mind Miami didn't get Kevin Durant. That was something that I thought they would get him, and if they got him, a lot of people were pretty down on what that team would have been. A lot of people didn't want to see him go there. I think they probably would have been like at least a fifth or fourth seed. So
Yeah.
now who knows how they are?
Though they were a 37 win team last year. Like without Durant, unless they really pull a rabbit out of the hat, I'm not really paying them too much mind. Like I think they should blow it up. That's a topic for another episode. The
Yeah,
last thing I'll bring up, and again, this isn't what I would do. It's just based on what the reporting and the rumblings have been. I feel like if there's a team that could like really surprise us and trade 4 first round picks for Jaylen Brown or like take a Zion swing or something. I could see the Raptors being that team. Do I think that's necessarily a good idea? No. But do I think that's in play potentially? Like, I think somebody is going to make another like pretty big move here to try to jump into this power vacuum.
I could see Toronto being that team. I could maybe see Philadelphia doing a little something, not like going all in, but maybe doing something to try to. Obviously, we got to see what happens with Embiid first, but maybe they could do something. Indiana, like Boston, they'll still be solid. They'll still be competitive. Um, but I'm very curious now. How does this impact their offseason? And YKB in the chat is already asking about, would they be more hesitant to pay the tax now? They're projected to be taxpayers next year. Could they be more open to letting Miles Turner walk? I don't think so. I'm pretty certain they'll do they'll keep him still. Also, they have their 2026 first round pick back, which is one of the most like oddly timed trades in recent memory where the Pacers weren't going to have their draft pick next year. The Pelicans had it, and now they got it back in exchange for the 23rd pick. Uh, like I said in my discussion with Brian when we were talking about the NBA draft, we're talking about this trade. I liked it a little more for the Pacers just because you never know. Like you already know what this draft's going to be, but you don't know what can happen next year. It's crazy they made this trade like I think the day Tyrese actually got diagnosed with the calf strain.
Maybe it
So
wasn't an accident. Are we 100% sure? I mean,
it was it was the
they
same day.
probably knew, right? And they probably knew at the very least he was hurt and there was a risk factor. I don't think that's the motivator for the trade. I also wonder if it was in the back of their mind. Yeah, I'm not willing to dismiss that idea entirely. As far as the tax stuff and Turner goes, I don't think they're really in danger of losing Turner because, frankly, the market doesn't bear that out unless Brooklyn gets engaged. And I don't think Brooklyn is going to. Detroit has pathways to doing it. I think it's probably too costly for them to justify it. What I do think you have to worry about, though, is would they try to offload a bench player to duck the tax even after re signing Miles Turner? So, like, there had been some buzz, like, before the playoffs that maybe Obi Toppin would be dumped to help save, help them duck the tax. I think Obi played too well in the playoffs, and he's also so young. I really hate to say this, but I have to be fair to the conversations that we've had in the past where when Tatum got hurt, something that we've talked about a lot is that Derek White is going to be 32 when Tatum gets back. So it might make sense for Boston to move him and get younger. TJ McConnell is going to be 35 when Tyrese Halliburton gets back. He's so cheap. He fits easily into a mid-level exception. And I think after the finals he just had, he'd probably get something pretty good back. Like you could get a mid first round pick probably for him. I would not be surprised if they tried to move some bench player and McConnell is the one that comes to mind. Now they are really thin at guard with Halliburton out. I think Mathurin is starting next year, and if I were the Pacers, I'd be trying to get him locked up to a rookie extension before that happens because I think next year could be a breakout opportunity for him. But yeah, I think there's a good chance somebody on that bench gets moved to duck the tax. I know we don't like to talk about things in these terms, but they lost a lot of revenue by Halliburton being out just because they went from having 4 rounds of gate receipts in the playoffs to like maybe having none or having one or having a play-in game or something. In that market, that's pretty significant.
So let's talk about what they could potentially do. I'll pull out the cap sheet real quick, but I, like you mentioned about pre-written stuff, all I had pre-written was assuming OKC won the title, which they did. I posted about it this morning about how long I think they can extend their run. Maybe we could get into that a little later. As far as the Pacers, I kind of had the operating assumption they'd probably lose this series, but I didn't expect this injury. So how I looked at it was, let's say Tyrese was still healthy, they'll bring back Miles Turner. He could make like around 30 million. Let's say they decline Tony Bradley, which is likely. They're working with about 23 million. So yeah, bringing back Miles Turner will put them over the tax. And I think the bigger thing at the time was just not going too deep into the tax, maybe like 11 to 12 million while you're still within the first two levels. So the penalty is basically like very close to 1-to-1, like $1 per dollar over the tax. Now, I think it's different. So you talk about moving a bench player, where now I think that if you do get a premium offer for a guy like Obi Toppin, for a guy like TJ McConnell, I think you gotta strongly consider it, because a lot of what the Pacers did this offseason, it's not guaranteed they're going to be able to repeat that magic. Like a lot of things went right for them to have this run, have 4 less than 3% chance odds of comebacks. Like a lot of stuff went right that might not happen again. So this would be the best time to trade those guys if the offers are that strong. Now you were talking about extending Mathurin. My operating assumption was they're probably going to trade him, just because he's
I
probably
thought that
going to.
before the finals. To
Yes,
be clear, yes,
because he's probably looking for a bigger role and like a starting level salary that the Pacers probably don't have for him, available for him in the future. So let's say if they move, let's say they traded him just for like a future first round pick, then after signing Turner, then you're in a position where like you're still in the tax, but like slightly over, in which case maybe there's some moves you can make to get under. Now, yeah, I think it's maybe they have more of a lens into the future. Maybe this injury does help increase the chances of Mathurin coming back, which would probably require that they're moving off some of the bench players. But I just not sure what exactly they're gonna do. All I know is that thank God they got their draft pick back. They're gonna be good. That'll probably still be like middle of the first round, like early 20s or late teens, and somewhere in that range. But I don't know. I think time will tell. In some ways, like if they won the championship, then it's like, well, there's a case that they're probably not going to repeat what they did based on the factors I explained. So you win the championship. Now Tyrese is out. For next year, you get to reset. You get your pick. Maybe if things also keep going wrong, you get a higher pick, and then you get right back into it for 26, 27. Unfortunately, they didn't win the championship, but yeah, that's what I'm looking at more so. What do they want to do with their bench players? Because this is going to impact their offseason somewhat. I don't know. I don't think it's going to completely change their plans, but maybe like, maybe 25% of what they were planning starts to get altered.
The benefit of getting the pick back more than anything is that it protects you from worst case outcomes because again, the season hasn't started yet, right? They're starting without Halliburton, but like what if you're 25 games in and like Nemhard gets a knee injury that keeps him out 2 months and then Turner sprains an ankle? You're protected in the event that like you end up in the lottery, and we now live in a world where play-in teams have won the last 2 lotteries, so like teams want to be protected in that case now. So yeah, getting the pick back is significant. The other thing I wonder about is what is the minimum point guard market going to look like for them? I think that's obviously too low for like the Jones brothers, Tyus and Trey. Maybe you could get one for the tax mid level if you found some money elsewhere. I don't think that's especially likely, but just realistically, given how much Rick Carlisle values ball handling, especially off of his bench, they're going to have to add a guard somewhere because whether McConnell, like if McConnell is on the team, he's still a low minutes player, right? He was great in the finals, but he's somebody that makes more sense in short bursts than he does as like, no, we're going to scale him up to 30 minutes. That's not going to work. So I do think they're going to add a guard somehow. If I were them, I'd be more willing to use like the tax MLE to get Tyus Jones or something. Like the advantage of Tyus Jones is like Halliburton, he's very high assist to turnover. So you can like maintain a similar team identity while Halliburton's out. You maybe can't run as easily, and he's obviously not the same shooter, but that's a thought that I have. But I think the likeliest thing that they do is mostly just run it back with this group, move off of one salary, try to duck the tax, or, like barely be above it. I went from being very bullish about Indiana's future to right now, man, I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I agree. I think they're going to mostly run it back, try to be as competitive as possible, and just get like one stopgap point guard for that's inexpensive. Also, Andrew Nemhard, he's not a point guard primarily, but maybe they'll let him start experimenting a little bit more as a primary ball handler. Uh, Matherin, I mean, nah, he's not, but they could. They've got some guys they can just experiment with a little more. But yeah, I would say they're gonna just do what it takes to maintain this team as much as possible and just get the best guard they can. Which would probably mean I would envision they should maybe win like low 40s, mid 40s at best next season. I mean, maybe more. Like even though this injury, like it really destroyed their ceiling. Like they still have a pretty decent floor as long as they have enough ball handling. Like I've been, from our Orlando discussion last week, I'm like much lower on how good the team is now because their lack of ball handling. Like it wouldn't shock me if Indiana is not that far from a team like in the regular season standings from a team like Orlando. So they should get right back into the playoffs, like at least at the play-in tournament. But
Your
yeah, without Tyrese Halliburton, they're not gonna. They'll probably. I'd be surprised if they win a first round series.
Your Orlando doubt is a little ridiculous to me. Like they're better than Indiana comfortably right now. We'll see how healthy
Yeah,
they stay. But like, yeah, they're not in the same range. Orlando's going to win 50 plus if they're
I'm saying as
healthy.
far as like the regular season goes,
Yeah, they're
could
going to win 50
see. Yeah,
plus
I
if
could
they're
see
healthy.
Indiana still getting like low 40s, mid 40s, and like maybe not being that far behind Orlando. As far as the playoffs, Orlando would. I would take Orlando right now over them for sure.
As for Indiana's ball
Yeah.
handling problem, I've got 2 words for you, Yossi. Russell Westbrook. That's how you're
Man,
going to maintain your pace. If you want to play fast, Westbrook can do that. I'm just throwing it out there. You can probably get him for the minimum. You have minutes available.
he definitely fill up the seats if they're worried about that.
Yeah,
That'd be
I'm just
interesting.
throwing it out there. I think Nemhard is the point guard next year, and I think Matherin is the starter shooting guard. And the silver lining here is that now you kind of get to see what both can be. Like you'd rather just have Halliburton, but it's nice to at least have a year to like really let those guys cut loose and just see what you have.
Yeah. No, I think I don't know. I think they'll let Nemhard play some point guard. I'd be surprised if they shift his role too much. I think they like him with the way they're using him. But yeah, I mean that's Indiana. We'll see. Obviously, still a lot of process on their end from this. It just happened so quickly. Where should we move to next?
Pretty important guy got traded yesterday. His name's in the
Yeah,
picture. Maybe we start with
yeah,
it.
yeah. We might as well just get right into that. So, uh, where? Yeah, I mean, where exactly? I'll leave it to you. I'm still trying to gather my thoughts. But where should we start on this one?
My expectations were low, but oh my god, like
5 hours.
they couldn't even get Jabari Smith. They couldn't get Cam Whitmore.
Oh,
Like how much has
when you said your expectations were low, I thought you were talking about my hosting.
oh
yes, I'm very tired. But okay, no, I mean, let's talk about the actual return. I think this is actually okay in terms of just when you put all the context together, you look at everything the Suns gave up to get Kevin Durant and what this return is, it's a disaster. As far as what they actually ended up getting versus like the expectation, at least my expectation, I actually think the Suns got a little more value than I thought they could. Uh, I was very low on the Durant package. I think this is still pretty underwhelming for most people who follow the league. For me, this is like maybe 20% better, mainly because they got the 10th pick. I didn't think the Rockets would even give up the 10th pick.
well, you know how I feel about the 10th pick. They were never going to make it because they never had minutes available for him, right? Like that's
Yeah.
what they went through with Reed Shepard. Part of the benefit of this trade is that they've opened up minutes for Reed Shepard. They weren't going to make the 10th pick, right? I think they
Yeah.
were going to move it in some capacity. We had talked about them trading it for future picks. I could have seen them trading it for a role player, whatever. They didn't have minutes for the 10th pick. So I didn't think they were keeping it anyway. I didn't think they were keeping Jalen Green anyway, frankly. Like, I just thought Ahmed had really taken the mantle of like athletic ball handling guard that they want to build around. I don't think they really had a place for Jalen Green and what they were doing long term. Dylan Brooks is like the hardest thing to replace out of this, but they already even have Tari Eason. They have Jabari Smith, who's a different type of very good defender, but I think he is a very good defender. They didn't really materially lose much in this trade. And I think Reed Shepard can like take on a lot of what Jalen Green did. They're obviously very different players, but like I think you're going to be able to slot Reed Shepard into a 25 minute role, and he's going to be very good for them, especially like given that they now have a little bit more creation juice with Amon getting better. He's, now going into a third year and having Durant there. So like having the movement shooter becomes that much more valuable for them. I don't think that they're as good as Oklahoma City, but at this moment right now, I think they're pretty clearly the second best team in the West, which is a pretty good place to be when you consider A, how good the West is, and B, like Oklahoma City was not as dominating on that run as we maybe would have hoped. I don't want to say they're vulnerable. They're not. Like they're still going to win 60-ish games if they stay healthy, but I don't look at them as inevitable in the way I thought I might have in April, especially like I don't think they're going to start their cost cutting yet. I will say though, this year they have everybody under contract coming up. But after that, when Chet Holmgren and Jalen Williams start their next contracts, that's when they're going to have to start trimming role players. I could see them doing that preemptively if the right offers come along, or if like they just like their young guys enough to give them bigger roles, where like Isaiah Hartenstein has a team option for the 26-27 season. We presume he's not going to be on the team at that point. Could you see them just being like, okay, now Jalen Williams, big Jalen Williams, is ready for a bigger role. We're going to get him on a cheap contract. Let's trade Hartenstein now, deal with that ahead of time for an expiring contract and a good first round pick, where like maybe that trade makes sense in the long run, but it doesn't help them next year. I think they're in the right range now. Houston is like, I think it is now plausible that they could compete with Oklahoma City in a series.
Okay, so a lot to unpack there, especially the now the Thunder side of things. So I'll get to that. But as far as Houston, so all the reporting indicates that it was between them and Miami, and that Miami was only offering one other first. I feel like maybe there was a way for the Rockets to get this deal done without including the 10. Maybe they could have gotten other value for it. Like we've discussed, maybe they would trade it for a future pick down the line. But the Suns really wanted a present value pick. So for the Rockets, it's just seemed like they're not all they're really giving up for the most part is like, okay, one valuable role player in Dylan Brooks, you know, Jalen Green, which, yeah, but then there's a 10th pick, which really like has, I think, the most significant value from anything not only the Rockets were offering, but like what the Heat's offers seem to be. Like I think that asset alone was like better than every individual player pick that the Heat reportedly had on the table. So, you know, I think to me in my eyes that was basically the trade, like the 10th pick, and for the Rockets, they, as you mentioned, they were never going to make the pick, so it was just more so expendable for them. They were able to just move it off because they were going to anyways. So very low price to pay considering they didn't really give up like other than Dylan Brooks like any meaningful like uh, rotation players. Now I do think there are some flaws. I do think they need to like get an actual shooting guard. We can touch on that. I'm not unless Reed Shepard's ready. I already threw you a suggestion privately, but I will say, as far as them going forward now, yeah, low cost to pay to raise your title odds like this. I do think there has to be another move if they're going to go at OKC because we're seeing teams like Memphis, for example, they're stepping away. They know they can't compete with OKC with what they've got. They're taking a step back and they'll try to come up with a roster construction that could be a little better. Maybe OKC will have declined a little bit by then.
My question, before you go keep
Yeah,
going, do we know which pick Miami offered in the future? Like,
I
do we know?
think
Is it like
I
two
think just
years
one.
out with
I think
protections? Like, or is it like you can have any one pick? I probably would rather have like Miami 2030 unprotected than number 10 this year, just because this is something that we talk about a lot. Having that pick far out gives you a lot of optionality where at some point you're going to be able to move that pick for value. Whereas having number 10 right now, it's really like you've got to get that pick right or you have to trade it right now for somebody who's available. And like, just to be honest about this, what I suspect is going on in Phoenix right now is they're trying to figure out, can we turn number 10 into a starting caliber center? And like, I wouldn't be surprised if somebody swindled them out of that pick where like, does Brooklyn find a way to be like, yeah, let us take all your money and we'll send you Nick Claxton and you send us number 10? Or like, I guess Utah already took the 2031 Suns pick. The funniest outcome here would have been if the Suns had kept the 2031 pick, but then given that number 10 for Walker Kessler. That's something I could have seen them doing. But now, ironically, I don't even know if number 10 is enough to get Walker Kessler. I think any team with a starting caliber center to trade is probably having meetings right now saying, how can we use this center to steal the number 10 pick from the Suns? I think though, like if you're asking what I would want, I'd probably want that 2030 or 2031 Heat pick a little bit more than number 10. I think this is a draft. I'm not a draft guru, so take what I say with a grain of salt. I think this is like a 7 or 8 player draft and not a 10 player draft. And even if it is a 10 player draft, I don't know that I necessarily trust this front office to get that pick right. Considering I guess James Jones isn't running the team anymore, but them taking Jalen Smith over Tyrese Halliburton is a red flag. They're famously light on scouting. They don't invest in that as much as normal teams do. So I personally would be a little scared to make that number 10 pick as the Suns, but I guess it makes sense. Like it is a good asset.
Yeah, I saw a report they're trying to get someone who could help them with that pick. So I don't know. I guess that could mean both a player that can contribute, but also maybe an opportunity to get a veteran that can help make them better. Uh, yeah, we'll get to the Suns part, but as far as Houston, uh, based on what they're going for of defensively dominant team, physicality, if any team could potentially be equipped to beat OKC in the West, I think this Houston team is getting there. I don't think they're there quite yet, but I think they're getting pretty close. And I think now, like as I look at this roster, I feel like now, like we've discussed, like Derek White, what would it take for the Celtics to trade Derek White? Who are the teams? Like we've touched on, like the Magic before they got Bane, the Warriors potentially, the Mavs. Now the Rockets scream to me like that seems like the perfect fit. Like if they can bring in a guy like him, that would complete their lineup. Another because they need a little bit more scoring. He can shoot. Uh, Obviously, an all defensive level player, so fits what they're going for. Has played with Udoka before, um, and they can make it work. It's complicated, you know. There's a lot of complicated salary cap stuff would involve Fred taking a pretty big discount from the team option. But I feel like they got to make another move, kind of like in that kind of for that type of player now. If they're really going to, because like you're going for Kevin Durant, you're basically thinking we're trying to win a championship now, like this season. And I think they're like one type of move of that caliber away from really being able to challenge the Thunder.
This is where I disagree. I think the price for Kevin Durant was so low that you don't have to go all in right now. And you can sort of treat Durant as like, what if this is just an appetizer where we want to get Amin Thompson into like the conference finals? We want to get our young guys exposure to that, but we're not ready to go all the way ish number. I wouldn't be surprised if what they're thinking is we're going to do this for 2 years and then we're going to have a $60 million expiring contract that we can dangle to get like the longer term guy after that. I think this was just like good value at the right time. I don't think they have to treat this as we're all in right now. Like they have such a long window, presumably. I would not be really eager to give up my deep future stuff for like Derek White, who's going to be 31 on opening night next year, and he's not a star. And like, I know he shot very well in Boston. That was a much friendlier offensive infrastructure than he'd probably have in Houston, even with Durant there. So I love Derek White. I think there are a lot of teams that should be trying to trade for Derek White. I think for Houston, it's like we're kind of playing with house money at this point. I don't think we need to rush.
Well, let's define what all in would mean then, because they still have like they have all their first round picks except for 2026, and then they have those two extra Suns first, which would probably be the assets that another team would covet the most. So would it? I don't think you'd have to trade all your picks. Like you can, they can trade up to five. They probably could get him with like two. The question is, do you want to trade both the Suns picks, like the premium assets that other team wants, to bring in a guy that, okay, yeah, as you mentioned, he's a little older, he's not an all star, but when you look around, we don't know if Giannis is going to be available. Clearly, Booker is not available. I don't know if Jalen Brown's going to be available. If Derek White's the best you can get and it doesn't cost you all your picks, then that might be the type of move they might have to go for. Like I don't know if they viewed Kevin Durant as the perfect fit. I doubt they did, but that's who was available to them, and they got him for the right price. So it's one of those things where if you sometimes you can't exactly pick who you want, but if you can get a certain guy that fits, then it might be worth it. And then they'll probably still have all their picks going forward, and they have such an incredibly young, talented team. They've got all those guys you mentioned, Shingun, Jabari, Reed, Amen. Like this is still like they have a future. That is the future. There is like more all in would be like if they have to include some of those guys, which they probably I don't think they would.
But
So
the core problem here, the thing that you just haven't sold me on is why do they have to do this now when they have potentially 10 years? And by the way, like let's say hypothetically Giannis never becomes available. How many guys have become available over the last like 3 years? Somebody always does. Luka Doncic was traded 6 months ago, right? Like we live in an NBA where guys are going to wriggle free every year. We might not be able to predict who they are, but like if it's not Giannis, then like what if it's Anthony Edwards? Or what if it's like go down the list of whoever? And it doesn't have to be in the next year. That's the key. They're so young that they can sit back. Like they could literally like go through the list of leading scorers in the NBA, point to a guy and just say, we're waiting until he becomes available. And if it takes 3 years, it takes 3 years. But history tells us that at some point, There's a good chance he's going to become available. And if he doesn't, is there anything wrong with just using those Suns picks? Right? Like we talked
Yeah.
so much about them using those picks as trade chips. I would be pretty eager, given how expensive they're about to get, to just short the Suns and just say, like, Phoenix has no idea what it's doing. They're a total mess. Devin Booker is probably going to ask for a trade at some point in the next few years. I'd kind of like to just hold on to those Suns picks and say, we're going to draft in the top 5 in either 2027 or 2029, or like we're going to draft 7th or something like that. And we're going to have a chance to add a blue chip young guy when we're really expensive and those 4 years of cost control are just really important to us. I just am not ready to sacrifice that upside for like a over 30 non-superstar. That's just not worth it to me. I'm open to them like taking another veteran swing, right? Like, could you turn Cam Whitmore into like a good starting caliber shooting guard? Like maybe. The money gets a little tricky, but like that's something I would maybe be thinking about doing. They also have Jabari Smith and Tari Eason, both extension eligible. I have a hard time imagining them paying both of them. Maybe now is the time to diversify a little bit. Trade like Jabari for, another scoring guard if you want to, and then re-sign Tari Eason. I just think you're jumping to the most extreme possible, like, yeah, let's do this right now answer. But even if they got Derek White, I wouldn't pick them in a series over Oklahoma City. So my thought is, if I'm giving up all that stuff, I need one of a few things. I need a guy who can be a star for me for a long, long time, which Derek White is not. I need a star, which Derek White is not. Or like, I don't know, man. It's a little too much for me.
Yeah.
I think I want the optionality moving forward. I just look at this and say they won 52 without Durant. They could win 56 or 57 with him. Just do that.
Yeah, I'm not no, you make good points about the actual value. I'm more so talking about the fit. I think that's is the type of guy they should try to bring in at this point if they can't get anyone better. Uh
Can I give you the cheaper version of that?
sure.
Go get Lonzo Ball. $10 million, does a lot of the same things, and you don't need a 40-minute player. You just need somebody to fill in another like 20-ish minutes. And even that is only if Reed Shepard isn't ready. So like they have the chips. Go get Lonzo Ball. You have so many spare
Yeah.
picks. Just give an unprotected future first round pick to get Lonzo Ball. That's a slam dunk to
Yeah.
me. It's going to depend on how much you're paying Van Vliet, which now you can correct me on this. I think they need him at 33 to duck the tax next year.
Uh I gotta see what that is now. I haven't seen the revised number because that also is contingent on Jock and Holiday, and it might be something like
Get rid
that
of
in the low
Jock, you're
30s for
fine.
sure.
And if you need to get rid of Holiday,
Yeah.
you're fine. Like, or just use Jock as the matching salary for Lonzo or whatever. But like, broadly
Yeah.
speaking, they're positioned to, if they want to duck the tax, they can duck the tax. And if they want to duck the tax and add somebody smaller, they should. That is a
Look,
Lonzo team to me.
I'm with you in the sense that I don't that yeah, they shouldn't be sacrificing like all their assets to they shouldn't be sacrificing all their assets. Keep building for their long-term future as well. But although the cost for Durant was really low, I I struggle to see how they're not going to do like a follow-up move when they just like that it like yeah, it's not an all-in move considering what they gave up, but it kind of is an all-in move in terms of on speeding up your timeline. Like this, I understand technically they can like just kind of go like this and play this year and ultimately lose and improve upon it go next year. But when you bring in 37-year-old Kevin Durant, like you're saying the window is now. So I think internally that's what they're feeling. Like this is our shot to not just make a deep run, but win a championship. So I wouldn't be surprised if they do make a move, even if they're giving up a little more value in the deal to bring in some of the guys that we mentioned. Um, so Durant, he's extension eligible. It's like 2 years, 122 mil. We'll see if he gets that. Maybe he takes like a little less to help the Rockets. It could help with extending Jabari and Tari Eason, as you mentioned. So yeah, Jabari's going to be reinserted in the starting lineup, which it like you mentioned, that like having that level of movement shooting is important now. I feel like more of the value at this point is more so I think they want Jabari to be with KD and play with him, and maybe through being with him, mentorship, maybe he can get molded into a more of an impactful player and have and like figure out his role. Not saying that they're doing this so Jabari becomes Kevin Durant, but they do share some attributes, both in physicality and their play style. So I feel like that's the biggest value. In which case, do you want to extend them right now, or do you just kind of play things out and figure it out from there? Worst case, you move them at the trade deadline or something like that.
Well, I think the advantage of having both him and Eason extension eligible is that you can kind of play them off of each other because there's sort of the fear of like if one of them gets extended, then the other is suddenly in limbo. So maybe you could get one of them to extend at a more favorable rate. I could also see Jabari like as a number 3 overall pick, he probably has loftier ambitions for himself than what he's been able to show in Houston yet. So I could actually see him maybe taking a deal similar to the one that Jalen Green took, where it's shorter term and you get out to unrestricted free agency earlier. But in exchange for that, you maybe sacrifice a little bit on the average annual salary. That's something that I could see him do because I don't think he wants to like strictly be in this 3 and D role forever. I personally don't think he has anything really to offer off the bounce. I don't think he's ever going to be a creator, but I think he's really good at everything else and potentially a very valuable player because of that. I think having him next to Durant is very helpful. You also bring up an interesting point about Durant potentially leaving a little bit of money on the table to help the Rockets. This is something that I've talked about with LeBron a little bit, where the other thing you can do is use the potential to do that as a way to leverage the team into making some moves you might like, where like I personally wouldn't want the Rockets to put too much future stuff on the table. But if you're Durant, you could maybe go to them and say, hey, I'd really like you to go get this guy. And if you're willing to do that, I'm willing to pay his salary basically by taking 45 million instead of 60 or something like that. I wouldn't be terribly surprised if that's what happened. He, especially because he has these relationships with so many people in Houston, like Ime Udoka has been an assistant coach for him in the past. He and Royal Ivy are very, very close. So I could see him potentially doing that depending on what the move is. But for now, if you're asking me for a price range for Jabari, maybe 25 a year. Does that sound right to you based on what he's shown so far? Like, not like certainly plus mid level. I'm going to say like good starting wing salary.
That's kind of what Trey Murphy, you know, what Josh Giddey's expected to get. The like, okay, you're not a max guy. You're clearly like you should be a good starter. So here's like, you know, around 30 million a year. I would imagine that's what he's going to ask for, and hopefully get. And so whoever gives it to him, whether that's Houston or another team, it comes with a big bet that you're projecting that he is going to finally like reach some form of the potential he showed coming into the draft. As far as the max extension, so since KD's essentially replacing Jalen and Dylan Brooks' salary exactly, it works for next season for 26, 27. Like they can give him his max if he wants. It'll work. After that, not really, because then Amin Thompson is going to be having his extension kicking in. He'll probably get a max if he keeps this up. In which case, it really does not make sense to pay him a max, KD a max, Fred, whatever he's making, Shengun making in the mid to late 30s. So I think the way you characterize a type of salary that Kevin Durant would take if he takes a pay cut makes a lot of sense. Like, okay, just take something like you're still getting paid very handsomely. It's just not the max. That's the type of extension or contract I've also made the case for LeBron to take this summer, just so the Lakers can get under the first apron, use the mid level to because they're gonna need free agency to upgrade the roster. They have such limited assets. So I would bet nah, I wouldn't say it's like 100%, maybe like 45% to 55% chance KD actually takes just like somewhat of a discount. By the way, I went ahead and crunched the numbers really quick on the Rockets. So they're about 13 million if they waive Jock Landale and Aaron Holiday. So then, minimum signings. I don't think they have any second round picks anymore after the trade. So yeah, I think you're right. It's 31 million spot on. That would get them right under the tax. So yeah, just a little quick salary cap stuff there. Let's move on to Phoenix.
What a mess. I don't know what else to say. They're terrible. They have only shooting guards on their roster. I think you could talk me into them winning, like going 500 this year, something like that, where like, you trade number 10, you get a starting center, or like you get below the second apron and then you use the tax mid-level on Luke Cornett or something like that. I think he'd really be interested in a starting job. But like the long term here is so bleak. I do kind of like the idea of Jalen Green next to Devin Booker more than most. The reason for that is like, even though you're not going to have a point guard, you're not going to have any ball movement in there. They could really use like that dash of athleticism because Devin Booker is such a like slow mid-range hooper type that just having that little injection of transition and like maybe he starts getting to the basket. It hasn't happened at nearly the rate we would have hoped, but athletically it's in there. Maybe that does that. But yeah, the long run here is we've talked about this. They're probably going to give Devin Booker the 2-year 150 extension, which we both think is a bad idea. We both probably think they're going to be 500 or worse this year and then like probably start to slide down from there, especially given how good the West is. And Devin Booker will probably start to get antsy after that. So I don't know what the long term plan here is. I've been saying for months, like, abort, 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 trade Devin Booker right now while you still can. Like, they'll still be able to trade him on that extension, but they'll get less back in the deal. So I don't know what the plan here is. That's my problem. I don't know what they think they're going to accomplish with what they have right now. I guess there can be some follow up moves we can talk about, but man, I just don't see it.
Yeah, I think the clock has started on Devin Booker, whether he or everyone in Phoenix realized it or not. This team is. You're saying maybe there you could maybe see a 50 win team. I don't really see a
Oh, I said
25 win team.
500, not 50.
500. Oh, 500. Yeah, that's what I'm. Yeah, 540 win team. I don't see more than a 25 win team. I know they're gonna make some moves. They can still trade the 10, the 29. They could trade one more future pick. I think they'll do something that they're
Wait,
gonna
they
have
can't
to
trade one
trade.
more future pick because they've traded
They,
31, so 32 is off the table. They
they
can
can
only.
trade. They can trade either 28 or 29
Oh,
because
because
they
they got those picks from Utah. Okay.
they got those Utah picks back in the odd numbered year, so that reset their Stepien. But then they went ahead and traded 26 to the Hornets to take on Nurkic. So when you're
But
looking
also,
at the
though, 28 is swapped to Brooklyn,
yeah,
by the way. Look at Brooklyn holding on to one last Suns asset. Good for them. Just like the Rockets held on to one last Nets asset. It's kind of funny.
oh, the Nets still have it? I thought they gave it to the Rockets.
No,
I don't know.
the Nets still have swaps with Phoenix in 28, but the Rockets still
Oh,
have
you're right. You're
Nets in
right. The
27. So
yeah.
I think it might have made sense. Like maybe they go back to the table now and they agree to like swap those swaps where it makes more sense for Houston to have Phoenix in 28 and the Nets to just have their own pick in 27. That's a
Yeah.
like interesting quiet trade I could see getting done in the next near future, depending on what Brooklyn's offseason is like. But yeah, look good on them for hanging on to one last Phoenix asset.
So they can trade either 28, which as you mentioned is swapped. I think with Brooklyn and Washington. I think Washington.
And I think the Knicks.
I'm pretty certain Washington has a stake in that too, but Brooklyn probably has priority because they did it the trade first with the Suns, and then that 29 is the lesser of Cleveland, Minnesota, Utah. So they could trade one of those. None of these picks, whatever the Suns have to offer other than 10, not looking appealing at all.
Is just can you clarify for me quickly? 2032 is frozen, right? They can't even offer swaps.
Yep,
Okay.
correct. So I feel like after the trade deadline, when it was reported that they almost got Jimmy Butler and Jonathan Kaminga and 2 first-round picks and Jonas Valanciunas, they probably felt pretty good that they were going to get something even just as good or better. And that did not happen. And they're all the reporting was, well, now they're kind of like, and during the weekend right before Sunday, before yesterday's trade, the reporting indicated, well, they're kind of stuck. They didn't think it was going to be this. They thought the offers would be better, and they're not. And now they're trying to figure out what to do. And I think that kind of checks out. As they because this is just 6 shooting guards on the roster, one backup big, a point guard who's expected to go back overseas, and one more big guy. Uh, this roster, I'm trying to like, I know I've seen a roster this strange before, this imbalance in terms of like just the positions being so skewed, but shooting guard, like especially these types of shooting guards they have, it's like one of the least like, not, I'm not trying to say like they're not impactful, but like when you look at all the different player types out there, definitely not the most coveted by any means. So if they're gonna be looking to trade Beal, obviously, Grayson Allen, uh, Jalen Green, if you know if they're not there's reporting that they want to keep them. I just don't see the interest in these guys. Like, do you see a robust market for Jalen Green?
If they could have traded Jalen Green, they probably would have done it by now, right? Like they would have done it in this trade. The only team I'd kind of heard was Charlotte, and even that, like I don't really know what the Hornets are doing, and they might take a shooting guard at number 4. Like they might have VJ Edgecombe at the end of this week, so they maybe just didn't want to make any sort of significant moves at that position until they knew how the draft was going to play out. Grayson Allen, I think, is probably negative value on that extension that Phoenix felt like they had to sign him to because they were going to lose the asset for free. And they did the same thing with Royce O'Neal. Good work by their agents to take advantage of the desperate Suns. Bradley Beal, like I have maintained, he's obviously overpaid at 53 million by a lot. If he can get free from Phoenix and become a free agent, if you can get him for a mid-level exception, I'd be pretty excited about that, right? Where like say he gives up the 14 million to become, a free agent and he gets that back on a non-tax mid-level. I can think of a fair few teams that should be pretty interested. And if he's willing to take the tax mid-level, then a lot of interesting stuff opens up where like what if he went to Denver? That could be really, really interesting. Like there are a lot of teams that could use Bradley Beal. What if he went to the Knicks and became their backup like bench scorer? I think there are a lot of teams out there with the tax mid level or maybe even the full mid level where Bradley Beal, I think of him as like he's a $23 million player currently making $53 million, and that is bad value. But if you can get a $23 million player making 13 million, now you're really talking about something.
Yeah, so John Gambadoro said that he still doesn't expect Bradley Beal to be a Sun next year. So that means either a trade, which he has a no trade clause, so that's probably still unlikely, or a buyout. So I wrote about what a Bradley Beal buyout could look like on Third Apron a couple months ago, and the main comparisons are Blake Griffin and Kemba Walker. They gave back about 25% of their remaining salaries. They had 2 years left. So Kemba Walker gave back like 20 million. I think Blake Griffin gave up like not exact like less, but like he also did his midseason, so proportionally it was still like the same percentage. So that would mean Bradley Beal would have to give up basically like the first 2 years worth of the mid level, which is like maybe 20 something mil. In which case that only no, I'm sorry, that like around 30 something million. I don't know, I might be getting the numbers off the top of my head, but he would, it only makes sense if he does have a mid-level offer on the table, which I would probably imagine he should. I haven't, I'm not going to look too deeply into that because, just I don't want to look into his market unless he's actually going to be a free agent. But if the Suns do that, you're mainly just like getting rid of him because they just want to get rid of him. I think it would make more sense to keep him despite how disappointing it's been, because that's a 50 something $1 million salary for next year. They'll have a better chance to do something with as a huge expiring. You buy him out, then you lose that opportunity. But that would probably get them in position to duck the tax, because And I'll just do like I'll pull up the cap sheet with the Suns because technically they are now closer. They went further into the second apron after doing this trade. But the thing is, they're probably gonna waive Cody Martin. They're gonna decline Vasilija Micic. So when you also include their 52nd pick, now they're like 4 million over the second apron. So then they're like 24 million over the tax. So if they buy out Beal, get him to take back like 14 million, now you're like 10 million over the tax. You're like now a Royce O'Neal dump away from getting under the tax. So that's kind of what all you're really getting if you're the Suns. You're in position to save all this money instead of having like a $400 million roster. Now you're getting down to like 200. Is that really worth it to not have the optionality to meaningfully fix your roster next year?
Well, the one thing I'll say, let's say just purely in a basketball sense, forget about the salary. For them, would you rather have Bradley Beal or Clint Capella? I think we'd probably say Clint Capella. So the argument I think they would make in basketball terms is if a buyout with Beal puts you in a position to use the tax mid-level to sign like a starting caliber center, that's something they would consider. I think the problem here is any center like that would rather play for the Lakers than play for them. We'll see what the Lakers do this week. If they trade for a center, maybe that changes. But I think their argument would be we just think we can do better with one of the mid levels than just having Bradley Beal on their team. I don't know that I agree with that. If you're asking me what I personally think, I think Ishbia is just so mad at how badly this Beal trade went that he's making a decision that's not fully rational, right? Like, we don't think of Matt Ishbia as a rational actor and running the Suns. I think what he's probably thinking here is I'm so mad that this trade failed. I just want to get rid of him. I'll do whatever it takes to do that. Is it a good idea? No, but most of what the Suns have done under Matt Ishbia has not been a good idea, and yet they still do it.
Yeah. So this leads to the next thing that they should, they have to do some type of rebuild. They can't do a full rebuild because they're just, it's one thing if you are like the Nets were when they were just leveraged by the Rockets, one team. They're able to do one trade with them that was able to get most control most of their picks back. And now they're in control of their lottery odds. With the Suns, they're the most leveraged team I can ever remember in NBA history, probably at all, because it's not just the Nets slash now the Rockets, because the Rockets have the picks that they have to make a deal with. It's the Wizards. The Nets, as you mentioned, still have a little stake. The Magic, now it's the Grizzlies. They sent that pick to the Grizzlies. The Grizzlies are also having a stake. Like, you can't really, the Suns don't have enough stuff to satisfy all these teams, let alone even like possibly one, and actually enter a full rebuild where they have control of all their, they get all their swaps neutralized, they get all their picks back, and they could actually enter a full rebuild. So even once they eventually reach that crossroads, which we both predict will end up with Devin Booker having to get traded, it's not even a matter of like if he's going to ask for a trade. There's going to, if they're starting the season like 15 and 25, like where do you go? Like where do you go? You have nothing else to do. Like they have a couple more bullets left. It's this offseason. They're gonna fire him, get a big man, get some point guards, and then what? Like this team's not stopping anybody. I doubt they have enough to get like a really meaningfully impactful rim protector. Um, so I mean, YKB asks, what's the best fit for Booker now? Orlando has Bane. Spurs about to get Harper. I doubt Houston wants to pair KD and Book again. So let me ask you this, because I've been thinking ahead of these the KD trade. What if the Rockets just lowballed the Suns hard enough to the point that they, the rest of the market's not high on Durant, and that could eventually get them to trade Booker to the Rockets. I would guess the Rockets could still have interest in him, but do you think the Rockets increased or decreased the chances of the Suns sending Booker to them with this trade?
Maybe I'd say increase slightly. I there's behind the scenes stuff that like we don't fully know, where like how eager would KD and Booker be to play together again. It didn't seem like that experience went all that well, but it also didn't seem as like personal as it did with Harden and with Kyrie. So I don't know. If you're thinking about fits, I do have one that I think is pretty interesting. 3-team trade. Anthony Davis goes out, a bunch of picks go to Phoenix, and Devin Booker goes to Dallas, where he and Cooper Flag can like play together for the next handful of years. I think that makes a lot of sense. I'm just kind of scrolling through. I could see Golden State doing it. They control their picks. I've got a fun. He's not gonna want to go here, but a fun fit would be Portland because they have like all of the role player stuff that he needs. I think that would be an interesting fit. But then I'd also want to just see in the next few years like who kind of emerges, right? Where like this is, I don't think this is gonna happen because I don't trust this team. What if Chicago like gets their pick right this year and Buzelis is good and Giddy is good? Like maybe do they say, yeah, let's trade for a star, big market, right? Let's do it. Detroit has been mentioned a lot. I am thinking like whenever that guy becomes available, whoever it is, it might be honest in the next year. It might be somebody a bit younger. I don't want to get aggregated, so I'm not going to say who I think it is. But I think there's somebody else they might have their eye on.
So I would agree that the Rockets may have increased their odds of getting Booker in the future just by expediting the Suns' downfall in a way. Maybe sending, not only taking Kevin Durant, but also like sending him Jalen Green in a way could really help with that.
The Trojan
Um,
horse.
but then, yeah, I would say I do think now there probably are other teams that have a better chance and might be a better fit because of this. You mentioned Detroit. I think that makes a lot of sense. They're in an interesting spot where they don't really need a specific type of star. I think Cade could fit with so many different types of players that I think they just got to get like a guy that they really like and makes sense value wise. Um, I kind of like Miami if they were to go after him for the value. Um, One team I could see going after him in the future. I mean, it's still early to tell. It's a new front office, but the Kings, uh, if they can get him for Levine and a couple picks, I think
Just
that's
send every player that we don't really like to the Kings. That's all we do. Anytime we think a player has a bad contract or is gonna have a bad contract, we just send him to the Kings.
yeah. So, yeah, I would guess within the next 6 months. I'm not saying there's gonna be like reporters out there saying he'll be available, but I think everyone who follows the league will probably start shouting, "Hey, like, what are they doing with Booker? What? This is not working. Like, why don't they trade him?" We'll get like that type of speculation, I think,
I think it'll be
in
a
the lead up
slightly
to the
longer
trade
time
deadline.
horizon than that. I think it's like what I think is going to happen is going to be similar to what's happening with Giannis right now, where we're going to go into next offseason and they're going to be like, is it going to happen? It might happen. And then it doesn't happen. And we hear the reports of like, no, here's how they're planning to retool the team and like blah, blah, blah. And then they're bad for another year and then it gets louder and then it probably finally happens eventually. We
Yeah,
didn't talk about this, but I do want to bring up the like what my method of rebuilding the Suns would be if they are totally committed to Booker. And it's not great, but I think the answer there is they're just so limited from a value standpoint. Like there's not enough, there's a bad talent to dollars ratio there that what they'd probably have to do is like plan for cap space in 2027 and try to do it through free agency. Even then, like Phoenix is an attractive market. It's done well in free agency in the past. I don't know that their roster is interesting enough to like recruit somebody great, but could you get like 2 or 3 good starters that way? Maybe you're putting a lot of the star onus on Booker when I think we both think of him as somebody who should be the second best player on a good team and not the best player on a good team. But I think that's something that they could pitch to him as like, oh, we're going to be the max cap space team in the summer of 2027. And that's when we're going to go get you your guy. And then like either that works and they roll with that, or more likely it doesn't and they have a mediocre team, or then Booker just gets traded.
I agree. It's going to take longer than it should. I think the speculation or like the proclamations, hey, like, what are the Suns doing? Trade them already. I think that's going to start at this year's trade deadline. They probably won't trade him for whatever reason, and then it'll probably be kind of like a year from now, where they really gotta actually do it. That would be my prediction of how that goes. So yeah, just a what a turnaround in 2 years. You had a very complete team that were fit together, all your picks, and 2 years later, all you have are a bunch of shooting guards, no picks, and Bradley Beal. That's it's impressive, honestly.
That's the biggest case of new owner syndrome I think I've ever seen. And by the way, he traded for Durant literally 2 days after taking over the team. Like I remember seeing his statement where he basically said, like, I've tried being hands off before. I'm not going to do that anymore. So I went and I actually checked the dates, and it was like February 8th, 2023, Ishbia takes over the team. February 10th, 2023, Ishbia trades for Kevin Durant. So I guess he's referring to February 9th, 2023, or whatever that date was. Like
Yeah.
it's about it's not the sustained record of bad ownership that like Vivek Ranadive has, but in a short burst, I don't ever remember a team speed running its own destruction
Yeah.
like.
That's exactly what I was going to say. It's like a world record speed run in terms of setting the franchise on fire. I don't know if there's been something like that in sports. Um, so last thing then, this should be a little more fun exercise. OKC. So they're the NBA champions, and they're, based on their performance, I think a lot of people felt a little underwhelmed. But either way, this was still their first deep playoff run. Last year, they only went to the second round. They're very, very young. SGA is only 25, 26. Jalen is like early 20s. Chet's early 20s. Like this team's only going to get better. So for those who get upset or snark when they hear dynasty as the word to describe them, like it's, we're not going to just proclaim them one, but it's very possible that this is a dynasty. Time will tell. But a lot of people have a lot, that are looking at what just happened to the Celtics, what's kind of happening to the Suns with their payroll getting super high, that the new CBA and the second apron could stifle the Thunder and maybe in 2 years leave them in a position like the Celtics. And I think we should go about, quickly, short answer to that is that's not going to happen. Like if you're a fan of a team hoping that Jalen Williams or Chet Holmgren might become available to you, I would probably start thinking about other players because yes, the Thunder are going to get super expensive. Yes, they're going to pay a lot of tax, but and yes, they are going to have to move off some players in the future. But when they do, they're going to start at the bottom. So I want to pull up their 26-27 cap sheet projection. This is assuming Chet and Jalen get 25% max contracts, which has started them at 42. If you're thinking like, wow, Shea only making 40.8 million, that's not that much. Like Sam Presti gets a lot of credit for a lot of things. I don't think anyone ever talks about how he made sure SGA didn't get a player option, which would be in this year. Otherwise, SGA would opt out and then sign the supermax, which would start him at 59 million. This is like massive for just extending their run for like another year and however long their window might be. But when we're looking at this roster, like it's going to be very expensive. They're going to be pretty deep in the second apron. I would imagine if they repeat, they just say, screw it, let's just, run it back and pay whatever. But assuming they are going to eventually do some type of retrenchment, whether it's in this particular season or in the future, where are you starting?
I think Hartenstein is the first with that team option that I'm like thinking about getting off because we've talked about big Jalen Williams in his offseason before. They're going to decline the team option. They're going to make him a restricted free agent, and they're going to sign him to some preposterously low 5-year deal where he's going to step in as the second big. Then you go to the 3 and D wings, and it's a little bit more interesting there because you have Lou Dort on the team option. Caruso is on an extension, but he's also 5 years older. And then you have Kason Wallace, who's going to be eligible for a rookie extension after next season. And you start to wonder, like, you probably only need two of those guys. I think you could pick whichever two are most appealing to you. I think based on age, I probably trade Caruso closer to the peak of his value. That's the other thing, by the way. I think we're not giving enough credence to the idea that they might trade somebody this offseason, not necessarily like out of financial fear for the present, but because they could get like quite a bit of value if they were early and they weren't putting themselves in a position where like they have to act now to duck whatever tax threshold that they set. So like if they traded Dort this summer, I wouldn't be terribly surprised. I don't think it's going to happen, but I think it's a possibility. The way they're set up, the whole idea here is that they're going to cycle in cheap rookies as the other guys get expensive. They've maintained their picks. They've maintained their pick flexibility from other teams so well that, like, okay, we lose Lou Dort. Kason Wallace steps into the Dort role. Guy we drafted steps into Wallace's role. The cycle perpetuates itself. And if you trade guys early enough, you trade them for enough pick value that, like, now suddenly that cycle perpetuates itself where you have more future picks to work with. So I think their long term is going to be fine. And then the last thing I'll say, the way the second apron is set up broadly, it's designed so that teams aren't going to go above it more than twice in a 5-year span, because that's when picks start dropping to the end of the first round when you've done it 3 times in 5 years. The Thunder, if ownership is willing to pay the actual cash that it takes, I don't think the Thunder would mind if like their 2036 first round pick dropped to number 30, because if they're in that position, they've won multiple championships and it's like, who cares? Keep the good times rolling. We'll deal with the future when it comes. And we have so much future draft equity from other teams anyway that who cares if our own pick falls to number 30? So I
Yeah.
think if you're wondering about any danger to like Chet or J Dub, it's not going to be based on salary. The only thing that could happen is number one, injuries, which is a possibility, especially with Chet. And then number two, like we have to acknowledge this. We don't think it's likely, but this is the NBA and this stuff happens. We got to talk about the disease of more, where like we're hearing a lot of Scottie Pippen stuff out of J Dub, and that stuff sounds really good right now. Maybe in 2 years, he's thinking, no, screw this. I'm one of the 5 best players in the league. I can go be the best guy on my own team. We have no reason to think that's going to happen right now, but we didn't think that with James Harden either, and look what happened. So all I'm saying is, from a salary perspective, they're going to be fine. The NBA is an inherently chaotic and unpredictable entity. Weird stuff is probably going to happen. I don't know what the obstacles are going to be to their dynasty. I don't think cost is the likeliest one. I think the
Yeah.
likeliest obstacles for them: inherent randomness, number one; Victor Wembanyama, number two; the disease of more, that entire concept, number three; Nikola Jokic, maybe, possibly, maybe someday having a good team around him again. That would be nice. And then number five, people are going to joke about this, but I think it's pretty significant, is Mark Walter buying the Lakers, because Luka Doncic on a well-run Lakers team is really, really dangerous for the rest of the league, because you just know they're going to be able to find the next star. We don't know who it's going to be, but like they're not going to just lose LeBron in 2 years and be like, oh, darn, now we're a 47-win team. No, they're going to get somebody. They're the Lakers. That's how it works. So they're going to be pretty dangerous as well. In order, that's what I think the threats are. The CBA is like, it's a threat and it's going to affect the way they operate. But no, they're not going to lose one of the core guys.
So I agree that the main two threats, yeah, you mentioned Wemby, that's one. But as far as like internally, one, any potential early declines. But then two, you mentioned just any like chaotic randomness, slash the the wanting more, which is like, okay, if one of the top three guys want to be elsewhere. So I would agree that those are more likely threats to of a Thunder downfall than the CBA, uh, and any big tax penalties. The Thunder have shown a willingness to spend a lot of money in the last decade. People don't remember, but during those Paul George, Russell Westbrook years, they paid a lot of tax, and they had like one of the highest tax penalties like at the time. And these teams did not win a playoff series. So imagine the appetite to spend on a proven winner, on a champion. So that, I think the first thing we need to define is like, first of all, you mentioned the how the CBA is structured to have have teams go into the second apron like 2 years in a row max. before they might want to take some type of a step back. So if they want to do that, then if they're trying to keep the next 4 years open, they should probably try to get below the second apron for 26, 27. In which case, how do you do that? Okay, you start with Hardenstein and Dort. Can you get him to decline those? Can you decline those options and get him to resign on something maybe a little bit less, just take somewhat of a discount, but most importantly, something that's team friendly in the future years. As far as like more immediate savings, I think you're looking at guys like Isaiah Joe, Aaron Wiggins, where this is what the draft picks are for. They have 4 first round picks over the next 2 drafts. Can you find their replacements with those selections? If you can, then that's a lot of money right there you can offload. Eventually, those decisions creep up a little bit more. Like you got Caruso, he's making $20 million a year. Cason Wallace will eventually be extension eligible. He's going to be due for a contract after this year. Maybe at that point you want to, as you suggest, move off one of their guys earlier than later, get some value for a guy like Caruso who's going to be entering his early 30s, get off that salary slot, make room for Cason on his next deal. So they've got a process, they've got a ways to go before any of these top 3 get touched. But as far as the actual window goes, let's say they get below the second apron in this season. So you've got, year 1, you just won a championship, 25. 26, you're going to avoid, the Thunder are going to avoid the tax next year. They're already below it. They're going to stay under it. 2027, try to stay below the second apron. See if you could just get below it. So then 29 and 30, you are, 27, stay below the second apron. So then 28 and 29. Okay, you go just spend as much as possible, go over the second apron, who cares? And then starting into 2030, okay, maybe you take somewhat of a step back because the big thing you're risking is one, that 2036 first round pick being frozen, but then also you're going to enter the repeater tax. It's going to get super expensive. I think that might be a little more relevant, especially if they start to decline a little bit. But like you mentioned, the frozen pick, the Thunder might be immune to that. They've got so many picks over this decade. If they're able to restock on picks in the 2030s, get like at least one extra pick through most years, which is possible with the types of players they have, maybe they could start rolling over some of these picks. Like, can you trade that 25 Miami pick for a 2032 pick and kind of repeat that cycle next year with the extra picks you've got? Like, then you could conceivably just decide, we'll go over second apron 30 in a row. We don't care if our pick falls to the end of the first round in whatever 12 years from now. So yeah, long term, they're in a good spot.
I do want to say,
as long as they've got as long as they got the appetite to spend, they're not going anywhere.
You brought up the cash penalty as more prohibitive to them than the basketball issues. I think this is something like fans don't need to know about the actual tax rates, but we do. And the new tax rates that start this year, this upcoming season, especially at the repeater level, if you go deep into the tax as a repeater moving forward, you're now talking about several hundred millions of dollars in taxes. It is going to get really, really expensive to be a repeat taxpayer moving forward. The Lakers can afford that with Mark Walter. The Knicks can afford that in New York. Other markets are going to be scared off by that. It is really prohibitive. I don't have these numbers in front of me, but doesn't it get up to pretty quickly, $6.75 per dollar, $7.25 per dollar, something like that at the repeater level? I don't have the table in front of me, but it is really, really prohibitive.
Yeah, the new tax system is starting this year. Let me see. Maybe I'm not gonna be able to pull a table, but yeah, the thing is, the actual dollar amounts never end. They just keep increasing by 50 cents the deeper you go. So let's say you are 50 million, which is pretty ridiculous. To be 50 million over the tax level in any year. But let's say you're 50 million over the tax level, then you're paying $8.75 repeater rate for the later
I have the
levels.
table in front of me. If
you're looking at you're basically looking at a $300 million plus tax penalty alone.
So here's the table. I have it in front of me. This is what the repeater rate is starting next year. The first level at $0 to $5 million, it's 3 to 1. Next level, $5 to $10 million, 325 to 1. Okay, small increase, not a big deal. Third level, 10 to 15 million above the tax rate, 550 to 1. Third level or fourth level, 15 to 20 million, 675 to 1. Like this is bonkers, right? Like if you're
Yeah.
gonna be a repeater in like the second apron range, you're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars at that point.
Yeah. And you're looking at a tax penalty bigger than your payroll, which we've
Yep.
never seen a team do.
That's gonna happen
Maybe,
at some point in the next few years.
I mean, if the Thunder repeat next year, very possible they might be okay with that. Well, the Warriors were pretty close in 2022. They almost had like a 1-to-1 payroll to tax penalty, but
The
yeah,
Celtics right now are like that too, right? They'll shed money, but right now that's where they're set.
right now, they are. I don't know. I have the wrong information in front of me, so I don't want to waste too much time. But anyways, that was our analysis on the Thunder. Congrats to them, and congrats to preemptively beating the second apron before we even knew it was gonna come, and being equipped for it. Just amazing job by Sam Presti. To when the playing tournament happened and lottery reform happened and the Warriors dynasty ended, teams just decided, oh, here's our window. Every team decided to go all in on the president. The Thunder like, nope, we'll help you with that. Give us your picks. You want Steven Adams? Great. You want Dennis Schroeder? Great. And this all accumulated to this core, and also having the future draft pick surplus to sustain it. And I don't know if we'll ever see something quite like this again. And they're gonna last for a while. So yeah, that's the 24-25 season. And yeah, I don't know how to close this. Sam, thanks for joining me.
Yeah. We got a busy few days coming.
Yeah, we got the draft on Wednesday. I will probably be doing a solo stream on the draft. Not really much like in terms of analysis, just more so, hey, come hang out with me while I update my cap sheets. Should be fun. So yeah, thanks for joining, everyone. I will see you guys next week. Make sure to follow Sam on Twitter at Sam Quinn CBS. You have anything you want us to look at that you've had putting out? I know you've been putting out a lot of stuff.
Read CBSSports.com. I don't even remember what I've written at this point. There will be more stuff. My brain is a pile of mush.
Yeah, I'm gonna take a nap. Make sure you're following me on Twitter and Blue Sky. My name Yossi Goslin. I'm gonna have salary cap analysis and every transaction as they come in the coming weeks. And subscribe to Third Apron wherever you get your podcast and the newsletter on Substack. I'll see you.